Hello and welcome to the 6th video in the Oracle Exadata Cloud Service Workshop series. In Lab 6, I will be teaching you how to provision Enterprise Manager in OCI and monitor an Exadata Cloud Service with that Enterprise Manager. Now, we'll start off in the Marketplace section of the Oracle Cloud. Once you've navigated to the Marketplace, search Enterprise Manager and find the 13.4 the stack type. This is the most up-to-date Enterprise Manager. Now, when you select a version, make sure I also recommend that you select the most up-to-date version and select the compartment that you would like to deploy your Enterprise Manager in. For the purposes of this workshop, we recommend deploying in the same compartment that your Exadata Cloud Service is in. As part of creating this stack, you first have a page where you just give your name, description, and any tags you want to assign to the creation of this stack. Next, we will do some configuration details. First, we must choose the size. For the purposes of this workshop, we will recommend simple, and we'll have a link to a document that explains what each size, what your organization might need. Basically, it'll spin up more nodes and database nodes to scale to the needs of your organization. In this workshop, we recommend using the existing VCN that your XCS is running on. And we're going to need to find a CIDR block that isn't being used currently. And for the purposes of the workshop, we will use a public subnet to make it easier to access for participants. Now, one easy way to find your available subnets is to go and look in your VCN that is running on your XCS and find an available subnet. So I already have an EM created, but we would use something like a 10.0.12.0. So I can just copy that. And then I would need to assign a password, read the description to see what the requirements for the password would be, and also select a shape, boot volume size, and an availability domain, and then enter your SSH public key. Keep in mind here when choosing your instance shape and your availability domain and boot volume size that you may have service limits in your compartment that restrict you from creating these. If you do, the job will fail when it runs. So you should check your service limits and see that these shapes and in this specific AD are available. Then you also need to assign a administrator's password, and that again conforms to this specifications. And then click Next. Once you've clicked Next, you can then review the configurations you've given for this Enterprise Manager, and then you can press Create. You can then check on the status of the creation job by going to Resource Manager Stacks and clicking the stack that you just deployed. Here I'm showing you a completed stack. You could click into the job to see the current status of the job. If it fails, you can do a Terraform action where you do a plan, and then the plan will tell you potentially any changes you need to make, like moving something to another AD or a different CIDR block for your subnet, and then you can press Apply to apply those changes. Once your OEM is running, you should see VCN created and compute instances. My compartment, I have EM OMS1 compute instance created where my EM is now running. Here I get the public IP address, and the next step will be to SSH into our EM, get the IP address for where we can connect. So once you've gotten the IP address of your Enterprise Manager, you can then go to your terminal and try to make a secure shell connection by giving the private key file with your -i and OPC at the IP address. Now this should get you into the Enterprise Manager. And here you want to actually switch over to the Oracle user, which you can do by doing sudo su-oracle. And here you'll get a README of, a bash config file, which opens a README that has the URL of where you want to access the EM. So that'll be near the top, and you can just take that URL, that in your Firefox or any browser. It may give you a non-trusted credential, and you'll just bypass that by accepting that you're not going to trust the cert. Then you can log in, and boom, you're in your Enterprise Manager. Now, before we go and add the EM agent to the XCS, we're going to want to do a few tasks on the actual Exadata to allow the EM to communicate with it. So first, log into a bastion that has access to your XCS. You've probably done this before. And you're going to need to log into your XCS. So just show you on one of the nodes, but keep in mind you're going to have to do this on both of the nodes. So the most important thing first is to change the host file to allow it to talk to the EM. The EM marketplace image by default comes with the name OMS1 as its kind of not fully qualified domain name, but just a domain name. So you're going to need to add an entry like this, where you take your private IP of your EM and then add the domain name. It's usually OMS1. You can always double check by looking at the host file in your EM. You can add that to your host file in your Exadata. Now, the next thing you'll need to do is on your XCS VM, navigate to the SSH file, or SSH folder, I should say, under the OPC user. So you can see I'm here, this directory. And you're going to do a SSH keygen command and enter an ID, something like that. And a ID underscore EM key has been created. Now, you're going to want to take the IDM underscore .pub and then paste it, or copy it first, and then paste it into the authorized keys folder. And then you'll save. And then you'll need to go do that on the other node. And you need to, if you want, you can actually just copy one of these keys over to the other node. So the only difference you have to do on the pub is right now it has this ending, hub XCS GMVP2. When you copy it to the other node into the authorized keys file, just change it to GMVP1 or whatever that X is called. You can, the kind of nickname for the domain name. This way, in EM, we can just go create one key that we can use on both to SSH and to the VMs to monitor. Now, we'll need to give our XCS and our EM the ability to talk to one another. So if you go to your virtual cloud network and you go to the subnet list, you can find the subnet that your Exadata is lying in. Ours is in this 10.0.20 CIDR block. Now, what we're going to need to do is go to our security list and find the security list for the private subnet and make sure that our EM is able to talk to the Exadata. So, as you can see here, I've given this rule for all traffic from the CIDR block where the EM is to talk to the private subnet where the XCS is. Because the EM was created via a stack, its route tables are already configured, and some of them are done on the security list, and some of it is done via a network security group for the EM itself. So various ports that are going to be used, like 3872 or 4900, are already opened on that EM subnet. Now that our subnets are set up, let's navigate back to Enterprise Manager via that URL that we have open in another tab. We can get to the Enterprise Manager homepage. So once you've navigated to your Enterprise Manager, go to Setup, Security, and Name Credentials. From there, press the Create button, and you can give your credential name any name you like, something like XOCS. It's a good one. And for the scope, press Global. For credential type, press SSH Key Credentials. For your username, you want to use the OPC user and give the run privilege sudo and run as Oracle. So essentially what this will do is it'll SSH to the OPC user, and then it'll sudo and change over to the Oracle user. Now you're going to need to upload your private key for the Exadata here. Whatever private key you're using to log into the OPC user for Exadata is what you're going to want to use. You can either use the browse button to find it on your local machine or copy and paste it in if it's not available locally. Then you're going to want to press save. So after creating your name credentials, navigate to add targets manually. Here you'll go to install agent on host. Then you'll add 2 entries, one for each Exadata node. To get the names of the nodes, go to your Exadata and select the DNS names for both of these nodes. Again, put them into 2 separate entries and then select the Linux platform for each. Then press next. So the next page is the installation details page. This provides you a space to add where you want the agent to be installed on the host, and also which credential we use, which we've already created. So for the directory, you need to ensure that it's an empty directory location. The directory doesn't have to exist. If it doesn't exist, the wizard can create it. So we can just do something like /home/oracle/agent. Then this instance directory will auto-populate with another folder. For the name credential, we just select the credential we already created as part of an earlier exercise during this lab. Then we're going to select Next and Deploy Agent. Now this next part, I've already gone to my results where the agent deployment succeeded, but hopefully you'll see a screen like this where you get all check marks around your agent deployment. If something fails, whether it be on the initialization, prereq, or agent deployment, look at the error code and see what it is. If it's something around the key file not working or the SSH file, make sure that you've added the SSH key that you're using in the credentials to the authorized keys file and that you have an appropriate ending, so OPC at the host name at the end of that key file. Also, make sure that you've added the OMS1 to the both EXA nodes host file and the EM IP address, private IP, to that host file. So those are a few things that are common mistakes. But EM should create an error log and you should be able to debug that from that. And if you see all green, that means your VMs have added. Then go and check that they're actually collecting metrics on them. So if you go to hosts, you should see the 2 hosts that you added. I'll just click on one. And you should get metrics like CPU memory showing up here for that host. Now next, you'll want to navigate to your Configure Auto Discovery page. So from here, you can select one of the nodes and run a Discover Now job. And click Yes, run it, and then it should complete. And you can do it on both nodes. And these will go around and discover Oracle Homes, the Oracle database, the listener files, everything that's running that EM can monitor on this VM. Now you're going to want to run it on both nodes that the EM is monitoring, or that the XOCS is running on. And it might take a few seconds. So once it you get the completed successfully. You can then close. And you've done it for both nodes. Then click on the discovered targets. And you're going to want to find the cluster databases. So you can sort by the target type here. And here are all the cluster databases. And you can press promote on one of them. Now, after you press promote, it'll take you to the next page. You're going to need to find the databases that you have the passwords for. So check mark. You can do the sysdba role unless you've unlocked the DBSNMP user. And then you can give the password for the sys command. And then you can press test connection and that'll test everything you've checked. And if it gives you all good, then you should be able to press next and then save in order to promote those targets. Now, once you've promoted the targets, they should show up in databases. So here you can see I have a ton of different databases that are running on our Exadata Cloud Service. And they're all cluster databases. If I want to click into one of these, I can see various metrics that are being brought in. So whether it be resource metrics, performance metrics, SQL-specific metrics. Here I can go to configuration or target setup to do some more administrative things. One thing I want to do is monitoring configuration. In case you've only brought in one of your database instances, you can always do a sync cluster database instance, and it should find another database instance. There's some features of EM where it doesn't always bring in both database instances. Another area is your performance home. So here you can log in, and you're going to need to log in as the sysdba user. I have it saved already. And that'll give you access to the various performance metrics that are in the performance hub. So usually this is being brought in from AWR tables. You can actually generate an AWR report from Enterprise Manager as well. Now, the next thing that we want you to set up as part of this lab is a group. So if you go to targets and then groups, you can press create and create a dynamic group. Now, I've already created one called XSCS. And all it does takes all of the databases that are running on XSCS and puts it in one group. It's easier to navigate. Let me show you what it looks like when I edit it. I have a membership criteria that says anything that's on this set of hosts is going to be added to the group. And I can use the search bar here to add hosts to the group. That allows me to quickly navigate to certain areas of Enterprise Manager to see certain databases. You can press OK to modify that group, save it.